but also of challenges and deficits. The audit is a deep one. It's a tricky one. And also, when we are doing the audit, we have to put it into context with the regional politics and regional economies, and also from a global perspective, because Uganda is not in isolation of other settings, regional, continental, and global. Now, 86 was a very ambitious undertaking. My elders, like General Mugisha Muntu, will tell you that it was quite ambitious, and it was done against a very difficult history, or epoch in our country, in our country's history, is that Uganda had sunk very low. The state had almost collapsed. The economy had almost collapsed. And many Ugandans had lost hope. We've had the stories of people jumping dead bodies in the streets of Kampala, women raped, property stolen, people shot. So the young people who left university and then secondary schools, and the peasants who took up arms, were very ambitious in reforming the state, the rejuvenation of the state, and building an army that is pro-people. Because the army was very critical. The army is at the center of the state. It's the most important element of the state. So we had an army that was quite against the interests of the people. And the ambition was to create an army that was pro-people, disciplined, educated, trained, professional. So what I hear, what Wananchi are saying is that in that regard, we have moved a very good distance, and Ugandans are proud of their military.
How does it compare when you said the audit is a tricky one, and I take that very seriously. When you look back and people are complaining about violation of fundamental human rights, the return of torture, people from the National Unity Platform, for example, and other parties in opposition complaining that their people are being abducted, and you have new words that have emerged in our lexicon, like drones as a name given to vehicles. You have words like safe houses. How does that leap, how does that audit fit in what you just shared with us?
Yeah, that's why I called it an audit. And it may not be 100, but neither is it 0. This army took power from a very different type of army, the UNLA. And then there were insurgencies of Lakwena. It's a long history. Lakwena, Konyi, northeastern Uganda, ADF in the Rwenzoris. And they have done quite a good job. However, along the line, it started, the general will tell you what used to happen in the bush. Challenges of discipline, challenges of command and control, challenges of poor training, mistakes being made by people who are in discipline. All those challenges have been there. An army is like an individual who's growing. So those challenges have been there. But I think as an institution, they have a lot under their belt. Okay. And the CV is good. The economy has grown.
We'll come to the economy in a moment. Let's first exhaust this bit on the military. Honorable Winnie Kiza, let me come to you. What would be your audit or the scorecard of the reformation of the military? Major Kwiri here explains it very well. The army that was pushed out and the army that came in, and the effort to professionalize and how it has conducted itself over the last 37 years.
Thank you, Charles, and possibly to us who seemingly look to be young. People keep telling us you don't know what happened in the past. You don't know what happened in the past. Well, we shall say maybe yes and maybe no. because to some of us who maybe saw Amin, who saw Botetu, and also the short-lived governments thereafter, we shall say yes, when the NRM took power in 1986, the first 10 years were years of excitement. And I think Ugandans can say yes, hope resurfaced. And we thought we were going towards the promised land. But just like my brother Okwir has said, if you asked those Ugandans who had hope then, they will tell you it was better while we waited. Because one, like you've said that then they were jumping dead bodies, I will tell you in Kasese we jumped dead bodies, courtesy of the NRM government. Just in 2020, people in Kampala here jumped dead bodies because of an election, and yet the reason why the NRM, Museveni and team went to the bush was that they were defending democracy, that an election had gone bad, but we see every other year or every other election period, elections going bad, from bad to worse. I think they are getting worse. When we recall that past that the Constitution also talks about, the preamble of the Constitution that was ushered in by the NRM government, which Constitution also brought hope to Ugandans, and we said yes. And also looking back at the 10-point program of the NRM government, they said yes, we are ushering in democracy, we are fighting corruption, we are ensuring that the population is safe and secure. Now we are insecure. Everybody is insecure. Corruption, now I'm told the new terminology is that now we have moved from corruption to cooperation.
We'll come to the debate on corruption. I wanted us to just stay on the military, on the army for a moment.
If we can just go on the army, it is true the army has been professionalized. But the things they do not depict a professional army.
Isn't that a contradiction?
It's a contradiction, and I there concur with my brother Wabon when he said it's a balance. They are professional and expected to do professional things. But the way they are doing things, they are even worse than Amini's people, and Amini was not educated. We believe even many of his forces were not educated. But the current regime, in the 37 years, what they are doing currently is a complete departure from what they wanted to provide to Ugandans.
General Muntu, let me come to you quickly. You commanded this army for many years. You were in the bush. And if you look at majority of the young people, they would fit General Muntu at the time you walked out of the bush. The agitation, the anxiety, the way they are relating with the military today, what would be your scorecard?
Let me first look at the Liberation Day itself. This possibly could be the third or fourth, because the Amin regime used to celebrate 25th of January 1971, and subsequent to that day would be celebrated as a Liberation Day. 11th of April 1979 was termed a Liberation Day by UNRF. That's when Amin's regime was overthrown. And I think it was celebrated once or twice. Because in 1981, a new dispensation came in, the second UPC. And UPC used now to celebrate the Heroes' Day, which was in the Bushenyi normally every year. I think it was, if I recall correctly, 27th of April or May.
So the return of
yes, that was
the return of Milton Obote from exile.
It was celebrated as a national day, which ceased as much as 25th January ceased and 11th of April ceased to be celebrated at all after the exit of all those regimes. The Basilio Tito Kello regime never celebrated any day because their day of the coup, they never went beyond, they never reached 1 year, so they never celebrated. They were only 6 months. And then we took power on we captured Kampala actually on 25th, but then 26th is a declaration of the taking over of Kampala.
There's been debate about that. Why didn't you announce 25th as the day of takeover?
I think logically it would have been very, complex to celebrate the same day with the Amin regime day. Even at a personal level, I don't think I would have been comfortable. But then, of course, the subsequent actions, which more or less has caused a debate in the public mind as whether there's a difference, also creates a big problem for the regime. Now, the day which was celebrated today, because of the nature of governance for the last 37 years, I have a feeling that the day General Museveni is out of power, it also ceased to be celebrated as a national day. Now, what is interesting when you look at the reasons why all these celebrations were being done, the reasons which were being given by all governments that would take over, right from when he pulled off a coup, and then UNRF, and then Obote II, and then 26th of Jan, put those reasons side by side, and you really will find that they are more or less the same. But we are still stuck in a vicious cycle.
Charles.
So there's a fundamental problem therefore that we have to deal with as a society, as a people.
Charles, General says fundamental problem from fundamental change. What was promised 37 years ago was a fundamental change. General says there's a fundamental problem. If you put together...
No, I think there is a problem with the edit.
With?
With the edit, your type.
Yes.
The way you amended it. Fundamental change. Because you said it's not a mere change of guards, but a fundamental change of what?
And I also keep adding, the president never said, President Museveni never said, this is a fundamental change. He said, I think.
Yes, no, yes.
People edit out
he said,
the I think.
He said, this is not a mere change of
guard. I think.
I think it's a fundamental change. So, which fundamental change? So, it's a fundamental change of God. Yes.
What are you saying?
I mean, we need to first interrogate that statement. It's a fundamental change
of God.
Because it's not a mere change of God. It's a fundamental change of God. It may impact politics, fine. Whichever way it would impact politics, but it was a mere fundamental. So I was asking.
Are you lending him the words?
No. I mean, if you complete the sentence, yes, because
in your own way.
I see Major Kwiri here wants to...
He said, this is not a mere change of God.
I think it is a fundamental change.
A fundamental change of what?
No, it was not a fundamental change, full stop. Chelsea, he said, I think it's a fundamental change in the politics of our country.
Yeah, but it relates to the change of God.
You see, up that point in time, our understanding of what had happened in our history was that there was inconsistency between what those who were in leadership would be saying and what they would put into practice. Now, unfortunately, along the way from 86 until now, there has been a repeat of the same thing, because you can see a clear clash between what is said and what is done. Again, which shows that there is a fundamental problem within our country. Because the question would have to be, why is it that people say one thing and do another? It's a cultural problem. It's a political cultural problem. So basically, Museveni is just walking into the very words he said.
Okay.
Now the question is, the previous God that is changed, that Mr. Museveni was saying, this is not a mere change of God. Whose God was it? You also need to interrogate that. But let me go to what Mr. Mugisha Muntu has said, because it's part of that event. And he said, we took over. That's but Mr. Museveni has already said, we captured power. The question is, whose power?
By force of arms.
Yes. We captured the power, as it were, by force of arms. Whose power did you capture? Now, and in my view...
State power.
Yes, whose state power? Whose state power?
It's an evolutionary situation.
Yes. So that state power, in that state power, who was the sovereign? The sovereign were the people of Uganda, and their power was captured by some group called the National Resistance Army. Now, we need to interrogate.
Didn't the National Resistance Army say that power had actually been captured by some group and we're supposed to rescue that power?
No, they didn't say we have rescued power.
They said we captured.
They captured it from those who had captured it from
I
the
don't
people.
know, but someone owned that power. And I think that's what we attempted to do in the CA.
Yeah,
to
by
say
bringing
that
it back to the people.
To the people with that, and we lied to ourselves. Actually, we believed this NRA group was meant their word, had integrity, and had given the CA the power to return the power. But to understand the mind of the National Resistance Army, you have to interrogate two statements. The first one, you have to interrogate, the first one is the National Resistance Army Occupation Al-Nakba Historic Mission. And the second one is the 10-point program.
Al-Nakba is an English word?
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah, you go and check it.
Okay. What does it mean?
It's Arabic.
That's Arabic. What does it mean?
So
help our viewers understand because it's important that they're moving with us.
You know, when they took over power, they became an occupation force, and a catastrophic one. What was their historic mission? Vis-a-vis the 10-point program. Now, to get this, you go in the house of Mr. Chikeire, where the conversation took place. Why the house of Mr. Chikeire? How does Mr. Chikeire's wife, because he's published, Mr. Chikeire's wife, who relates with the wife of Sam Bengana, how do they relate to the Ankole question? And Mchamuntu at some stage may help our viewers to internalize that Ankole question. Now, then the involvement of refugees in the seed. Because you see, in that house was the historic mission of the NRA discussed there. Where Mchamuntu was in all those meetings of theirs, did he ever share in the NRA historic mission? Because I'm very sure that the 10-point program was not discussed in the Master Chikeire's house. Now, if you are talking about the army, then you need to understand, to interrogate the seed of that army, the 27. Why did the 27 include refugees who are here? Kagame, Mr. Kagame, and Mr. Fred Wijema, the late. What did they symbolize? And in the same army, you have the late Habyarimana, president of Rwanda, as chief guest when they were regularized. And among those who were regularized, given ranks, was Mr. Fred Gisa as Major General, and I don't recall the rank Mr. Kagame got. Now those became the NRA state. So you now have armed refugees having participated in the seizure of the state, in capturing the power of the sovereign people of Uganda, who were their hosts, and they have become the state, regularized before Mr. Habyarimana, and armed to seize the state of Rwanda. So now that gives you, it can give you now a clue to the historic mission.
I'm still trying to locate where this conversation is going and how this audit is moving.
Armies are formed for a purpose, right? Armies are formed for a purpose, more especially if you are not in state formation. Because by the time the NRA came, captured the sovereignty of the people of Uganda, Uganda existed. So NRA was not involved in state formation, right? But you need to understand why those who formed the army formed that army, and it relates to their historic mission. So you now begin to interrogate their actions. Yes. First and foremost, the composition of that army, the questions they were looking at answering, and then what they do later. So you see the way they take over Rwanda. It relates to their historic mission. It relates to the character of that army. Had they built an imperial army? Or Because certainly they had not built an army to guard the sovereignty of Uganda, to guard the territorial integrity of Uganda. Now, then lastly, look at Mr. Museveni's letter or response or speech in Zimbabwe when he's discussing the conflict in the Great Lakes region, and where he says he advising Mr. Kagame to recruit a force of Tutsis, 1,000 from Masisi and Uvira as a standby force to attack Zaire in case Mobutu attacked Rwanda. So you also now see the ethnicization of the army. Yes, but I'm not reading it in the 27, but you eventually see it roll out, and so what now do you have? You now have a mustard seed of death.
How do you mean?
A mustard seed of death. If you check where they pass, or Kurra, their path is littered with mass graves. In Rwero, in Rwanda, in Zaire, in Sudan. I'm not saying it answers their philosophy, but what went wrong? Because even Madam Chiza is complaining about killings that any political question that rises is solved through brute use of force, extreme violence.
How does that sit with what the country has experienced over the last 37 years? And I want to bring it back to the people who were actually part of that struggle. Major Kwiri and Major General Muntu here. I hear Charles is saying so many things. Sometimes it might be difficult to get through to what exactly it is in the audit part of the army, the question of the army. If we can narrow it down to what Charles says, the question of the army, the capture of power, the sovereignty of the people, and the questions people of Uganda are asking themselves today. I've asked this question before. Would young people raise the same concerns today and say, look, if you look back 37 years ago, 42 years ago, more accurately, 42 years ago, this is what pushed you to go to the bush. We think these conditions still prevail. Number two is you're looking at the question of history. Honorable Wikiza talked about the preamble to the Constitution. You're talking about a history that we had run for 24 years, up to 1986. I hope that's accurate. Up to 1986, 24 years. If you subtract the 5 years of the Bush struggle, you have 19 years. If you put that together and compare the 37 years of consistency, how does the country, the many questions that emerge and what you called a tricky audit, how does that fit in for a young Ugandan who is 25 years old, hasn't seen anything else, and the memory of what happened before, of those first chaotic 19 years, has kind of faded even among adult people?
Well, Charles, two things. One, I am a critic, a serious critic of conspiracy theories. You know, I don't believe in this narrative that Museveni and his regional friends or maybe allies have a pre-arranged plan to occupy the country, to loot it. You know, I've been in very many of these spaces and places where I listen carefully to people who paint Museveni as some James Bond, Dr. No. You have watched of some scientist who's preparing to destroy the world, and then James Bond comes and saves the world. I don't think...
some Jack Bauer doing a 24 series.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So, I don't think that's true. Then secondly, we seem to be forgetting our political economy. The basics is that for change to occur, for revolutions to succeed, there must be objective conditions and subjective conditions. That the objective conditions on the ground, the state of the economy, the state of human rights, the failure to plant democracy, the disenfranchisement and emasculation of people's rights, the despair of people must be there for politicians to succeed in changing a system. Now, the subjective conditions is how prepared are the people in their minds? Are they politically conscious? Are they patriotic? Are they ready to die in order to change those subjective conditions on the ground? So for the NRA and NRM to have succeeded was a manifestation that there was a problem which was supposed to be solved. I think on that one we agree. That there was a problem that Uganda, from when the British handed over, the British themselves had left a lot of mess behind before they gave us independence. And the post-independence elections of 1962 were conducted on the basis of ethnicity and religion. And that led to an army being controlled by a certain section of the population, and then the civil service, and then the business controlled by another section of the population. And there were people across the country, Rwenzori, where she comes from, there were people who had been marginalized by the colonial administration, then marginalized by the independence political dispensation. So there was a lot of festering political and economic issues that had not been resolved. And then the political leadership was reluctant and also opportunistic. They were not ready to address those conditions. So finally they exploded. And there comes Idi Amin. He also takes advantage and he kills the country. And then we thought that the Wakombozi in 1979 we were going to address those problems. Then the elections of 1980...
Would it be the responsibility of the Wakombozi or the Ugandan exiles?
When I say Wakombozi, I mean the Tanzanians and then our own people who had come with the UNLF. We thought the UNLF now was going to, with the help of Tanzanians and other regional friends of Uganda, would sit down and then get a solution. Because Amin had really traumatized us. We had thought that both people who had come from exile and those who were here, they had seen enough. It was time for the country to heal. Then we got a very violent election in 1980. People were killed, people were tortured, people ran away, and that set the background for the guerrilla war of 1981-86. So what I'm saying is that the objective conditions on the ground made revolution possible.
But was not the cause.
It's not somebody Museveni said, no, I am angry, then he went and fought, then he won. He was helped by very poor people who brought chickens, who brought intelligence, who sent their children to fight and die. It means Ugandans gave massive support to the NRA.
Yes, the question I want to put there, and I'm putting it not just to you but to the whole panel. If you take a critical audit of that period, President Yoweri Museveni, who spoke today, was chief guest in Kakomero, says he was only ruled by Idi Amin for 2 days because immediately he walked out of the country. If you take that back to the independence period, to the time Amin came into power, you're talking hardly 9 years of independent Uganda. If you're talking about the period, so the instability during that period between 1971, when Amin takes over, to the elections of 1980, there is a role being played by the liberation that we're marking today. If you look at the second Obote regime of 1980, December 10th, 1980, when the election was held, to 1985, you could lump in the Okello-Okellos, 1986, and the takeover of the NRM. Are we in a position to locate the problem? Can I throw this to General Muntu? I'll come to you, Honorable Kiza.
When you look at the period of independence, the political elite, there was a lot of expectations that they would be able to start building a foundation on the basis of which the population would feel that they would be included in the governance, that there would be established systems of governance that would enable people to feel equal before the law, that there would be equal opportunities, that there would be democratic practices, that there would be justice. Unfortunately, the post-independence leadership, not only here in Uganda, incidentally across the continent, quite a number of African countries, where the political elite seem either not have been well prepared, or their levels of political consciousness were low, to a point where they were driven more by self rather than to be driven by a motive of country above self. Because when you track and look through all African countries, where you find there were pioneers of the independence governance, where there were leaders who were driven by the motive to put country before self, those countries have built stable foundations on the basis of which subsequent governance has remained on track. You can look at a country like Botswana, you can look at a country like Tanzania.
Though for Tanzania, it's still been the Chama cha Mapinduzi in control.
Chama cha Mapinduzi, but you can see stability.
Tundu Lissu just made a return after...
Because Nyerere, whatever mistakes he may have made, he made Tanzania feel that they are Tanzanians. He believed in the building of institutions. That's why you find that he never built power around himself, much as he was a very, very forceful and charismatic leader, in a sense. But he focused on building institutions. That's why you can find TPDF in Tanzania. You can find, you'll see Parliament. They have made mistakes along the way. It looks like they are carrying out corrective actions now. But elsewhere, you find that because of leaders who were looking at or motivated by self above the good of all, they took a similar direction. And they have had crisis after crisis, including here in Uganda. That's why I was going through a number of...
Why does Uganda stand out as almost as an oddity? Even if you looked at a narrower region, which is the East African community, we can extend this to even the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yes.
Kenya has sustained relatively peaceful politics. It's helped to push its economy forward, and they have kind of managed some what you'd call political coexistence. Yes, they also have problems. So Tanzania is another.
Yes.
Tanzania is another within the region. Rwanda, without the ethnic problems that bedeviled it in 1959 and I think around early 1960s and then 1990. And since 1990, some people would look back and say, maybe they seem to have a clearer direction. Then you can go south, you can go to Botswana, you can pick out certain other countries. Why has Uganda been so unique?
Well, maybe if we concentrate here on Uganda, because if we go beyond Uganda, maybe it may cause us to be diverted. We have failed to build a critical number of political elite who have got the consciousness that makes them do things because they're focusing on the country before self. That's the culture. That's the prevalent culture. That's the dominant culture within our country. And that's why you find, like we speak now, why would there be a dictatorship around Gen. Museveni as he's building things around himself? Because he's basically a micromanager. He has completely undermined institutions. They are so weak. Systems are broken down. But within that political dispensation, because of the culture of self-advancement, over and above putting a country first, many people look at how do I survive? How do I get into a position where I can benefit, regardless of what you may disagree with? And it's going to remain that way until we build a culture where you find there is a critical number of people who look at a country beyond self and therefore cause a shift in the balance of forces in favor of those people who think like that. Because it is only in that event that they can build institutions, that they can put in place functioning systems, that they can be looking at putting systems of governance in place which are beyond them. So that even when that leadership gets out, the new leadership comes in and they'll be moving in the same direction. Incidentally, that kind of culture, irregardless of the system of governance, whether it is in a democracy, whether it is in a dictatorship, you can track and see. You look at China, it's a communist party. It's not democratic in terms of the liberal democratic dispensations. But you can look at a party which said, where do we move China to in such a period of time? And consistently, not around an individual. The Gang of Four tried to do that after the death of Mao. They failed. The Chinese Communist Party reorganized, and you can see the direction it has gone. You can see even countries that have been building democracies. They don't look at an individual. They don't build around individuals. They build around systems that would advance a country. Look at Singapore. It's not a communist party. It was a dictatorship. Lee Kuan Yew being a very strong actor, but look at how to advance Singapore, build systems. They were agreed on the manner and method in which they would build their system. It wasn't a democracy. It was basically a dictatorship. But built around how to advance Singapore. Now look here, what is going on here in Uganda? General Museveni actually even tries to make things seem as if, even when it's talking about NRM, it is like it started in Mozambique, which is not correct. But he tries to build the history of one, NRA and subsequently UPDF.
Where did NRM start?
And then NRM, because you see for him, he started a struggle against Amin in the
Mozambique.
70s. NRM was not there then.
Yes.
NRM was a
And
total-
Charles talks about that meeting at the Matthew Ruchikaida house in Machinde. What level was that? What stage? At what
I
was
mean,
that
that
big
was
form?
much later, after UNRF.
Yes.
But you see, for
What
him,
was being
he tracks where we are at now, at least those who are in the NRM, around where he started. So he's like he's the center of everything that has been going on. And I'm not surprised about that because he's a micromanager. He simply has no capacity to delegate power.
It's factually correct.
What
that
do you mean
he
factually?
is. Yes.
But NRA didn't start in Mozambique. There were elements who were in Mozambique who happened to go into
Absolutely, yes.
NRA. It was a totally new ground of doing things. It just happened that General Museveni, who was in Mozambique, also was key in the actions of NRA and subsequent what happened. And we had our own objectives. We had our own principles. We were driven by ideals. And then we took power. And the contention which started in the bush, because even in the bush, right from 80, when we started, you could see two tendencies. You could see tendency of those who wanted to build and establish a foundation on the basis of which there would be good governance. You could also see a tendency of those who are looking at power as an end in itself. That has always been a contest, right from the time of independence.
Has that contest,
and that contest is still on as we speak
It is
now.
still on?
Yes.
So, who is on track here? Have we lost track? Are we still on track? What would you say? With the two
Well,
tendencies?
the ruling party lost track. General Museveni lost track. But there are people who are still sharing those same ideas, and that's why there's still a struggle. Outside of the ruling party, also inside of the ruling party.
Honorable
Because
Winnie,
there are those who would want to see a country that is built and established on a firm foundation for good governance. They are there within the ruling party. They may not be speaking so much, and outside the ruling party. So it will depend at what point people who think like that, how they coalesce around those ideas and build a critical mass and therefore shift the balance of forces in their favor.
Honorable Winnie, people looking at the celebrations in Kakomero today, preparations, I was holding some of the day's newspapers today. They're thick with celebrations and congratulatory messages. There is a significant number of Ugandans who think things are okay. There's another significant number of Ugandans who think we have fundamentally derailed. What would create the ideal meeting point for these two tendencies to talk about what General Muntu has been talking about on building and focusing on the country?
Like General Muntu has said, and I think also Rwamushana talked about it, many Ugandans will tell you that, including those who are sending congratulatory messages, they are sending congratulatory messages because they are just protecting their bread on the table. Many of them are working for government. Whether they believe in the same government or not, that is a story for another day. Because even those within the NRM, if you sat with them, they will tell you, guys, we lost it long ago. But we are just hanging on there because we must keep moving.
Why?
Many,
What
they
informs
just
that
don't
kind of
have,
thinking?
they just don't have the will. They just don't focus. Now we come back to what Janomutu was saying. They don't want to see country above self. As someone will say, as long as I can survive today. They don't care whether the next generation survives. And you know, as long as Ugandans still believe in Emere ya Lero and do not take strategic actions to get themselves from the situation that we are in now, we shall continue reading from the Book of Lamentations.
What is that situation?
The situation we are in is of joblessness. Now we come to corruption. We come to abuse of human rights. We come to massive vote rigging that took them to the bush. And you know, when they talk about the Obote government, they forget that they were part of those who were killing people during the Obote II regime. Obote was defending himself from the Musevenis who were in the bush. And then they say he was a murderer. They were trying to get him from power. The same thing that Museveni is doing when he's killing people. He doesn't want to leave power. You know, sometimes when people talk about Amin, to us in Kasese, by the way, the first secondary school in Kasese was built during Amin's regime by Amin. For Kasese to become a district and Ibundibujo, it was Amin's government that gave us those districts to try to solve a question that Major Roboni talked about. The conflicts, the discrimination by the colonialists, and also for the Bakonzo to get out of the Toro kingdom. So to us, there is something fundamental that we got from the Amin regime, leave alone his mistakes. Because our people wouldn't be educated, I may say so. Sadi Secondary School was as a result of Amin's government. And even when Amin was illiterate, going back to what I said, I may say what Museveni is doing currently is just a replica of the illiterates we are doing. Amin focused on building Uganda as a country. He was not building it around himself. Museveni is building an empire around himself and around his family. That's why you see there is a struggle between himself and his son, as if we are in a kingdom. That's why you will say that Salim Saleh can summon a minister of government and say, please, tell me how you are doing your things. Because the government is rotating around the family, we are not looking at institutions, and because of killing institutions, we are seeing now everything falling apart. There is no minister that you can walk to and will make a fundamental decision without referring to above. That is why we were discussing here the issue of NSSF. The minister trying to do a decision, the brother of the president is saying a decision is wrong, let's go back to the president, and then you see the merry-go-round because we are into a family rule. If Ugandans knew that we are going to fight to capture power, if I may ask the generals here who were fighting with Museveni, and we were fighting for Museveni's family, I know they wouldn't have gone to the bush. Or maybe they would have come earlier than they stayed, because they knew we were going to change wrong things. And among the many things that he was going to fight was rigging of elections, which he is doing now openly, the killing of Ugandans, which is done in broad daylight with impunity.
Let me ask maybe a fundamental question. How has Museveni been able to become what you're describing? Where were the rest of the people who thought with him, like him, and have been able to keep him in power for now 37 years? What happened? What went wrong?
I can even say that some of those who were advising him and thinking, Mr. Museveni, this is the agenda we came with for a better Uganda. Some of them, like Major General Mugisha Muntu, have run away. Some of them, like Dr. Kizza Besigye, have gone. Many, you will name.
Wouldn't it be fair to say those became minority voices and that the majority
and
stayed with him?
I can say whether they are minority, whether they are minority, by now you can know that they represent the majority of Ugandans. Because if Museveni knew that he was still popular, he wouldn't be killing people for a vote. He knows that Ugandans have said no to him. That's why he's now applying force to retain himself in power. If it is not by force,
results that have been given by the Electoral Commission suggest that he's been winning these elections, and he says, I have my numbers, I can show you where I got these votes from.
How do you win elections after you have one? He appoints the Electoral Commission that is going to be an arbiter in an election where he's a candidate. Secondly, he's using the military to beat up people at polling stations and arresting agents. So these are the things he went to the bush to fight. But he's still doing the same thing. I can see
Jeno wants to come in, but before you come back, Jeno, I need Charles to come in here. Charles, Major here was talking about the conspiracy theories. We can expand as much as we want, and Jeno wonders, if we broaden this discussion too much, we'll lose track. If you look back into the country, 37 years on, President Museveni has clearly outwitted everyone else, including the people he was with, whether it was in Montepes, Montepes in Mozambique, whether it was in Luero, whether it was in Chikaere's house, whether it was in some other house in Bugolobi or some other house in Chambogo, or wherever he was, he's managed to outwit. How has he been able to achieve this longevity?
My friend Okwil refers to as whatever you called it, the way he termed those theories. I'm trying to interrogate history to be able to understand the character I'm dealing with.
Sure.
Yes, and I would love that he challenges me on that history. You see, you cannot understand the Exodus unless you understand the historic mission of the force that met Moses. That bush with burning fire, and it was not burning. The statement, the declaration, the proclamation. First and foremost, Mr. Museveni, as Minister of Defense, because he said the objective situation on the ground precipitated the NRA war. Mr. Museveni, as Minister of Defense, went to Chiboga, visited Chiboga with Emmanuel Kafuneza, Mr. Emmanuel Kafuneza, Nyabushche Yibanda. Go look him up. They went together. Museveni was driving his Benz. And the reason was he was doing reconnaissance of where to launch the war. When he was Minister of Defense in UNLA, actually he was sacked by Benaisa the next day. He came from Chiboga. So what I'm trying to say is that the Museveni...
And the same Museveni had moved to tell Benaisa that he had been elected. He was going to become the next president.
Now maybe I'm looking at his mind.
Okay.
I'm interrogating his mind in relation to the NRA war. It started when he was still Minister of Defense. In other words, he was monitoring ground to wage war against the government he was serving as Minister of Defense. So with or without the confusion of the 1980 elections, Mr. Museveni had prepared to go to the bush. The second one is that the UNRA state, Museveni was part of the formation of the UNRA state, because it was a merger of Chikosi Maroon, Uito Jok group, Basilio and Tito Kero Rutwa, and Foronasa. And you need to go and check the role played by Amama Mbabazi as part of the commission, I think, that formed that army, the UNRA. So, in other words, Mr. Museveni waged war against his own state, the state he formed. It could not have a different character or current texture from what Mr. Museveni had constructed. Now,
so what you're saying that he created the objective conditions that Major Raboni is talking about?
It far exceeds that. Now, Mr. Mugisha is talking about Mr. Museveni's tendency being a dominant tendency. How did he become the chairman high command?
How? You tell us.
Yes.
Our viewers.
How?
No, our viewers would love to know.
But I mean, he was there. He was there. He needs to tell us how Mr. Museveni became chairman, NRA, high command.
Charles, we are telling our viewers, so we're asking questions so that we can help our viewers.
We all need to interrogate this. Yes. The second one is how did his own brother, Mr. Kerebaka Anwanaho, Salim Salerufu, become the commander of the mobile brigade, which I think was the dominant component of the equivalent of the SFC of today. In other words, Mr. Museveni dominated the NRA by design. It was not accidental. And the elites who purport to battle him now were part and parcel of that process. They saw it.
So does that speak to his stay, to his longevity, his ability to outwit?
Yes, of course, you ought to destroy those who are a danger or a threat to your historic mission.
And what is that historic mission? You keep referring to it.
The establishment of the Bachwezi Empire. Isn't he still talking about it? That Uganda was only stable 500 years ago. In his mind, there was Uganda 500 years ago and under the Bachwezi. That Bachwezi spirituality. I mean, I'm saying you cannot contest Mr. Museveni. You cannot contest the way he manages without interrogating his historic mission. Because he is true to his historic mission. And I think he was right to chase away or create ground that would expel those that were going to hinder his historic mission. He is true to it.
Okay.
And that explains how he arranges the economy. It explains how he arranges the education system. It explains how he does his foreign policy. It explains how he does, how he destroys the consciousness.
And right there, when we come out of a break, we'll be discussing issues to do with the economy, the social structure of the country as it is, the education system, and the other areas that you just mentioned. We'll be right back.
Frontline. It doesn't matter where we are. We bring it wherever we go because space doesn't determine our expression. Our moments are golden, timeless, and enjoyed in Mpola. Because Mpola Enjoyments is about our crew, our vibe, and our beer. Bell Lager, fresh vibes, Mpola Enjoyments.
Work, work, work. Work's over. Busy Biters, get down to snack business. When snacking is under attack, we'll be there to fight back.
Body of Mr. Namdi Wokiji was found at a beach house this morning.
When was the last time you saw Namdi? At the party. Did you notice anything strange about last night?
Are you taking money from my mother for this wedding?
You shouldn't be looking at that.
Ichi killed my son, and I want the world to know it.
Data usage tips to improve your experience. 1. Disable auto downloads and turn off auto sync to minimize unmonitored usage. 2. Restrict background data and delete unused apps for a smooth browsing experience. 3. Do not share MiFi or phone passwords to prevent unauthorized usage. For more tips, visit www.consumer.co.ug.
Set transport to the wrong person. Here's how to reverse it with MTN Mobile Money. Dial *165#. Select My Account. Select Initiate Reversal. You will see your last 3 transactions. Select the transaction you want to reverse. Enter your mobile money PIN and you'll get an SMS confirmation that the transaction has been blocked from being withdrawn. And that's it. Please note, only transactions that haven't been withdrawn can be reversed.
Pilsner Lager toasts to the bold people taking charge of their place in life.
To us who understand how far we have come.
And to us who appreciate where we are.
Hey, mfayo kayongeza nawe.
They recognize progress as an achievement.
But we also know the journey has barely begun.
That's why we're here. That means we either find a way or make a way. They never back down.
We step up to every challenge and reach for more glory.
Hey, Bold Pilsner!
Your time is now. Reach for more out of life and celebrate every win with a cold bottle of Pilsner. Pilsner Lager. Stand tall, stride on. NBS Frontline.
You're still watching the NBS Frontline, and we're discussing 37 years of NRM's fundamental change. And we're asking, how does the country view this, the tenure of the NRM? Is the NRM still on course on what it promised in a fundamental change? And I have seen some comments, people saying the show is dominated by Western Uganda. Well, we'd invited Chairman Mao to join us, but he was returning from Kakumiro and wasn't able to make it on time. George Muhimbise is watching us and says, NRM has achieved a lot in quantitative terms, call it hardware, infrastructure, health, education, security, etc. But done poorly in qualitative terms, call it software, values, political culture, discipline, governance, etc. Yet, it's on the basis of the software factors that hardware factors can have sustainability. He adds and says, because of failure to focus on the software, values, discipline, etc., the achievements in quantitative terms, hardware, have been destroyed through plunder of public resources, economy being in foreign hands, etc. Therefore, NRM has become a chicken that lays eggs and eats them instead of hatching them into chicks. Major Rabwan will tell you, Kisoma Mahuli, I think that's the word that they call it. That's from George Muhimbise. Another, okay, someone saying, someone says, greetings to President Mugisha Muntu. If you say President Museveni has been managing his 2 lines since Mozambique days, close to 50 years, don't you think he is a good manager? This is from somebody called Ruchama. Another person here, let me check. Sam Musana, I've seen the message, she's just enjoying the show. Someone says, is happy that Charles Romoshana is on the show. Says, it's good that you have your namesake on Frontline. Hope he comes to stay. Thank you, Ruben, for that message. Yes, there's a message for Honorable Okwiri Rabone from Kenneth Tumuramye. He's the lay reader at Kanyambe Church of Uganda. He says he sends you greetings. There are many other messages that I'll pick some of them. I'll not be able to pick all of them. Someone is to understand NRM and its achievements, one needs to evaluate the 10-point program. We'll just allow ourselves a quick run to comment on the last bit of this discussion. I want Major here to come in quickly to kind of wrap it up so that we can go to the other critical areas that the NRM promised 37 years ago and assess how it has performed. The question of the military, how it relates, and the governance of the politics, the management of the politics over the last 37 years. The critical question people are asking today are President Yoweri Museveni closing in on 80 years of age, closing in on 40 years in power, at least by the mandate he was given in 2021, and a discussion that is already talking about him running again in 2026 to 2031. Where does that leave? Where does that place the country? Do you think that if you look back, has the country matured to such a level that it can afford the kind of conversation that we are witnessing today?
That's a difficult question. But I think in his mind, if I could speak for him, I think President Museveni was in 1980, 79-80, was very worried about the fragility of the Ugandan state, and maybe comparatively the fragility of the African state. Because that is the most fundamental question. Because when you have a fragile state, it's difficult to grow the economy. It's difficult to have social services. It's difficult to do anything. It's difficult to get foreign investment. It's difficult to. So what the General Mugisha Muntu set out to address, what was most urgent, was first to dismantle the state that was becoming an obstacle to the existence of Uganda as a nation. And that state was characterized by a very dangerous army, anti-people, indisciplined, name it. So that one we managed to do, even for us who came later, after they had done a very good job in Luwero, is dismantling that army, dismantling that state, and setting out to build a new army with new characteristics. Because the foundation of the other one was the colonial powers who built it, and that was the doctrine. But an army with a new doctrine of saying if you meet them at night, they can guide you to your home and say, Karibuni nyumbani, and they continue with their patrol. That kind of army. So, by and large, I think we have managed to have that army. But now, how do we take advantage of that stability? First of all, we even spent a very long time dealing with insurgencies in northern Uganda. So, a lot of time was lost, mistakes were made, and northern Uganda started being part of the Ugandan economy, I think in 2003 there. So that the fragility of the state, have we addressed that? I think that's fundamental.
Have we? How would you answer
and
that
it links
question?
with the economy.
How would you answer the question of the fragility of the state? I can see General Muntu is shaking his head.
You see, the problem with us, the elite, or Ugandan analysts, political analysts, it's either or. We are all in extremes. We say the countries around us have done very well. Uganda has done very badly. But when you look at it really seriously, we are not very far from each other. You look at Tanzania, you look at Kenya, we all operate around these.
And why would Africans by and large be comfortable? President Museveni has used the word comparing, looking for the tallest among dwarfs. So if we say Tanzania hasn't really done much, Kenya hasn't really done much, we're still averagely around the same. Why should that make us comfortable as we seem to be?
Because we're small economies. You see, weak economies and developed economies normally have similar characteristics. They have unstable politics. They have divisions among the elite.
Wasn't that the promise?
If you cluster them, most strong economies build strong political institutions.
Yes, wasn't that
weak
the promise?
Economies?
Wasn't that the promise? Wasn't that the impatience of a country that was only 19 years after colonialism in 1981 and then 1986? Wasn't that what General Muntu, who went earlier, you who joined later, and the others, including the Rwamushanas who joined in after university and started the government, wasn't that what this country was trying to walk away from? Number two is a question I'd like to throw around. You're talking about the fragility of the state. Can 37 years of President Yoweri Museveni, 40 years when his current term runs out, give that guarantee? And you could look at other countries that have attempted to use the same model and say, hold power, hold the state together for as long as possible, and that is what will guarantee its sustainability. If you look across the African continent, would you find examples where they have succeeded?
Charles, let me do this quickly because we don't have time. I believe these are processes, and they are painstaking processes, and they take time. It's not an event, it's a process. How do you build an army? How long does it take to train a pilot of a fighter aircraft? How do you grow the ethos of the institution, the doctrine, how do you build your commissars in the army, the civil-military cooperation with the... Building institutions is a very difficult process.
Yes, but that process, must it fall on an individual or a group of individuals?
It's a group of course. The UPDF, NRA UPDF has been built by efforts of very many people. Principal among them is the general.
Yes, let the general, forgive me, Honorable Winnie, let me jump to the general. The same questions I'm putting.
The crisis we have gone through as a country from 1962 rotate around the failure to create a culture of resolving political problems. That's one of the biggest challenges. And that's why armies have been drawn into politics all the time. 71, the coup was not an accident. It was an inevitable consequence of the failure to resolve the political contradictions in the 60s. And then, of course, when he came, it was a military regime, and of course the mismanagement of power, and then the exercise plus Tanzania came and took over. Then one would have hoped that now the political actors would have learned lessons and they would build a new foundation on the basis of which there could be resolution of political problems through political means, through building consensus, through tolerance to agree to disagreements. That didn't happen. And that's, again, at the core of the challenges that we face as we speak right now. Now, General Museveni's micromanagement style is also another problem. Why? Because micromanagement style stifles the building of institutions, actually even weakens institutions where they exist, and undermines the establishment of functioning systems. The major mistake that was made, and where a number of us had hoped that we were going to see a turnaround or a change in the direction of politics in this country, was in 2004 with the amendment of the Constitution and the change of the term limits. Because if that had not succeeded, Uganda would be a completely different country as we speak. Because definitely institutions would have become prominent. But when General Museveni, or let me say this way, when the ruling party top organs allowed themselves to be manipulated, and the parliament allowed itself to be manipulated, and the country allowed itself to be manipulated, and we changed the term limits that were embedded within the constitution. That was a build-up of the state where we are at now. The army is a critical factor in the stability of a country. The principle of separation of powers, parliament, judiciary, executive. Once there's focus on them building themselves and raising the consciousness within the political elite that they are autonomous, but that they cooperate in governance. We have not built that culture yet. General Museveni, failing to learn from the past, unfortunately, is still abusing the state security forces, which I simply can't even, understand, knowing that armies are not the ones who cause problems. It is the failure to resolve political problems which can easily drag into armies into play, and at times, unfortunately for our country, lead to crisis.
Would
current...
that speak for Uganda's particular case,
Yes.
General Muntu?
Yes.
You have the National Resistance Army,
Yes.
which creates, what do you call that? Becomes the National Resistance Movement. Where do you draw the line between the army and the politics? And how there seems to be some kind of fusion that emerged right from the bush
Yes.
into governance.
Yes.
Now the question would be, people like yourself
Yes.
and the others who think like you, at what point do you think you lost the ball to President Museveni and he was able to run in his own direction? And number two, 37 years down the road, what needs to be done? Because we can review the history as much as we want. The question is, what needs to be done to bring the country back to track, as you seem to be suggesting?
Even when we changed the name of the army, there was a lot of contention. There are many people who wanted it to remain NRA, but fortunately we succeeded. Those of us who wanted to change the name, because we wanted there to be a delinkage, at least at a psychological level, first and foremost. And then we're hoping that there will also be space, because UPDF has had a significant number of well-educated, highly trained officers, and also who have combat experience, that have got a capability. If there was a conducive atmosphere, they would have professionalized the army, and it would be completely delinked from politics. General Museveni doesn't want that to happen, because he's dependent on it.
He argues
and,
that
and,
he has,
and,
actually.
and unfortunately, that delinkage hasn't happened yet. And I think where we're heading as a country, I think that's where lies the biggest danger. We pray to God that there will be a transition, it will be smooth, and the country remains stable. Because if that doesn't happen, you can't easily tell what will happen down the road. I mean, you can see, like right now as we speak, you have a general of the army in uniform, and he's doing campaigns. It's insane. But because of the culture that we have, people want to survive. Parliament ordinarily, which would stand its ground and question that, they are playing dead. The organs of the ruling party, who hopefully, if there were a significant number of them who would be saying, this is not correct, are not doing that. Why? Because the dominant culture as we speak, because General Museveni has manipulated the situation for such a long time, on one side, fear, on the other side, manipulation using money and positions. The whole national psyche is that if I can get where I can be and survive, that is okay. We are putting our heads in the sand. If we don't get a significant number of people, political actors, outside the regime, inside the regime, who are able to say, no, let's resolve this, an issue of that, in that case, we will keep evolving, hoping that things can straighten out, or if they don't straighten out, because if we don't exert effort, we would be hoping that they can straighten out by themselves. If they don't, we can easily hit turbulence. Now, if we did that, then it means we would have completely failed to read history. Because when the army took over in 1971, it was something that those who were political actors, I was a young boy in primary. My father was deep in politics. You could hear the whispers that they were. 1971 came creeping, but it was expected that something was going to happen. Nobody knew what was going to happen, but they thought something was going to happen because there had been failure to resolve internal political contradictions. 79 by the time Amin regime fell. It was also another crisis which had been building up. When Rutwa, the contradictions which they failed to resolve within the UPC government, same thing happened. So you ask yourself, what kind of political elite do we have, regardless of whether they're in government, regardless of whether they're in the opposition, who can't see certain issues that are so critical to the stability of the country? That's where the problem lies, the culture. General Museveni is a symptom of a larger problem. As long as you have a culture of people who look at survival first, rather than saying the country must be put above self, whether you are in government, whether you're outside of government. You can easily even have different actors, but the same trend.
Thank you. Sembusi Ivan is watching us and says, for me, what I'm saying is that Uganda has changed under NRA, NRM government, though they had also experienced some challenges. And the bad thing is that they have forgotten we, the descendants of the NRA liberators and orphans. This is Sembusi Ivan. Justin Tolit says, after 37 years, agriculture depends on NGOs, on training farmers. Public schools have crippled. Health centers are more sick than patients. Fighting corruption is an anthem. NRM can present one tarmac road as achievement in a district. Human rights abuse. And then says 37. So he's listed out 5 issues which for him are important. Amulas is asking, says he was expecting to see Honorable Bright Rwamirama from Isinjiro. He says, what happened? He was traveling back from Kakumira and wasn't able to make it on time. And he says, thank you, Honorable Winnie Kiza, for representing the people from Rwenzururu, and says they love you. And I want to come to you. When you go outside of the politics and the governance, there are other areas, other fundamental areas. The economy, education, healthcare delivery. How, in your view, has the government scored so far and over the last 37 years? Could it have done better?
Just, I think the NRM government could have done better. While growing up during those days of the UPC regimes, as a young girl going to primary school, I used to get books written on property of the government of Uganda, not for sale. I saw schools being built, and you would see a school, actually the schools that were built during those days, the hospitals that were built during those days, you still see them standing. But the ones that are being built during the NRM regime, many of them are commissioned with cracks, meaning that they may not stand the next 30 years if we are to count so. The agriculture subsector, which is the backbone of the economy, like this viewer is saying, back then, we used to have extension workers who would visit from village to village teaching farmers how to do better farming for better yields. And we knew that food security was an issue that the government was trying to tackle. Currently, people have to depend on government to bring pineapple suckers, to bring beans, to bring maize, which they will not supervise, and they are seeing Operation Wealth Creation. Even when they are bringing the maize, I see Mubuku Irrigation Scheme, which was a project of the UPC government, we are surviving on it. For the 37 years, if, for example, that extension had been made for irrigation, and we see more and more resources put into irrigation, into agriculture, empowering our farmers, then we would be talking of an economy that has been boosted by its government. But we see even the few irrigation schemes that we have closing down. Much of the money that is borrowed to go and do agriculture ends up being eaten than going to the population that is meant to serve. So really, many people are talking about education. We are getting out students or learners who cannot even understand what is around them. Back then, during the time of the Major Mugisha Muntus, when they were going to school, I think even my brother Waboni, students would know Uganda on the fingertips. But currently, even if someone finishes university without knowing the districts of Uganda, because they grow every other day, ask a university graduate of Uganda. whether they will even know the districts by name, and possibly if they even know where they are located. These are the graduates that we have that are going to be planners of the country. So even the education that we currently have is education of love your country, love Museveni, you must be patriotic. If you are not yellow, you are not NRM, you will not get a job. So everyone works hard to associate with now the Muhozis, to associate with the Salehs, so as to get jobs, whether they are educated or not, because education has lost meaning in this sense. First of all, they are half-baked. Secondly, very little understanding of the circumstances around them. And then thirdly, they don't have hope of the future they are running towards. So, I do believe that...
I was listening when you put General Muntu and he said, to an extent, Major Kwira Boni. Isn't that the same education system that produced people like you, that has produced people like yourself? I am saying the education that I went to is the one of property of the government of Uganda. That's the one, that's the foundation that I have of the education of those days. But bring our young people of these days who are the graduates of the UPE classes, and you see whether they will talk about the issues that we are talking about now. Okay. Apart from the few, maybe from a few families that make it a point and ensure that their children get that education by the parents themselves insisting on giving the better education. Aaron Ainomj is watching us from Mbarara City and says, the problem is that President Museveni and NRM have managed to largely capture the elites and professionals, even beyond politics. This can't give Uganda competent and effective systems or structures. Most elites fight to work for, not with Museveni, because they want Mereya Lero. You saw some medical doctors kneeling before him, etc. Major General Mugisha Muntu and team have a big task of sensitizing the elites, professionals. But time heals everything. Aluta continua. That's from Ainomj Aaron in Mbarara City. I see someone else here says, Museveni has been a good political player for the last 25 years, and in those years, he didn't have political prisoners, no kidnapping, and no death of his opponents. It's only in recent elections when he realized that the opposition is growing stronger and he had to use force to suppress them, as it is Amin and Obote's regimes. Museveni has been a good, yeah, he repeats the message. I need to know who this is, who sent the message. Can't find him quickly. I'll take maybe one more message. Those two war generals need to write books on what they saw or contributed in that 5-year war. And after they left the army or government. So we review or critique them, as that shall add to Uganda's publications. Without such, they will have done no justice to historical facts and give good to the food to the conspiracy theories. So, Major Abone, General Muntu, this is a challenge to you. I'll take maybe Gilbert Kayondo is also watching us. He says he likes the way General Muntu plays his politics. Gilbert Kayondo is watching us. I think, I don't know, from, let me see. I'll take maybe one last message from Igumira Rwamasindi, who says, good evening. For starters, the panel should know that we cannot discuss Uganda where it ought to be, because it wasn't. We can only discuss where Uganda was before 1986 and where it is currently under the NRM regime. That's Igumira Rwamasindi. Charles, let me come to you. If you move out of the politics, you move out of the networks you're trying to build, and we look at the state of the economy, the state of education, healthcare delivery, how has the NRM performed in the last 37 years? What does this say going forward?
If you want to understand the state of the economy, you have to understand the nature of the state you have. You read about the prodigal son?
In the Bible?
Yes.
What's the story of the prodigal son? And related to the 37 years?
Because the prodigal son relates to the economy. that existed in their family. Very rich family, and the young man decided to have his portion, goes somewhere and consumes it, but wants to come back to his father's home, now not as a son, but as a worker. Because the worker at home ate well, so he was now coming for the stomach. He was no longer coming for his soul and spirit. But the father rejected that, said, no, you are still here in my home. Where Ugandans now are, they are at the state of that prodigal son. That I am willing for faith, I'm willing to sell my sovereignty to live. I would rather be a worker in my country than be the owner in my country, because I'm a shareholder in this country. So to relate in this economy, you must first sell your sovereignty. It's a hard choice. Why? You followed the Zuma problem in South Africa relating to the Gupta family. Gupta family.
Gupta.
Yes. Why? Because there was an attempt at state capture. What the ANC and the South Africans were struggling against was state capture. What we have in Uganda is complete state capture. And it has generated two layers of state: the shadow state and the deep state. And the deep state is extremely very expensive to maintain, to sustain. So the economy you now have is basically to run those two states. The deep state, extremely very expensive, and the shadow state. And unfortunately, the two of them are armed. So this army you have is more or less a militia. It's an army owned by the deep state. But this deep state, again, is also an agent of some foreign imperial forces. That's why you hear this confusion in Congo, South Sudan, etc. So you ask, so you will work, you will contribute in this economy, but as who? As a sovereign, or as a prodigal son who has come back, not as a sovereign, but as a worker?
The prodigal son had plundered his inheritance. So where does that put your analogy?
He consumed.
He had plundered his inheritance, hadn't he?
Yes.
Yes.
Of course, I'm not saying that these ones who captured the state here are prodigal sons. I don't even think they even qualify. That's why you see we are at the level of state. We are at the level of the occupation I raised earlier. So therefore, to solve all this, you must deal with Mr. Museveni as an actor. Because I'm not comfortable calling him a political actor, because he's armed. He's an armed.
There's someone called Bafachinanye who says, today's show is more of the usual political elite lamentations. We surely need a third force of intelligentsia, elite to think beyond the NRM. The moment we Musevenize our politics, he in turn makes it a point to participate and counter the politics. Could you respond to what
are we celebrating the 5 years when he was sworn in? Today, are we celebrating when he won? When he was declared having won elections? Have you ever heard him celebrate the 5 years? He celebrates the 30-something years. We are not dealing with it.
You're referring to the 5 years that would fall on 12th May when he was sworn in after winning an election.
Absolutely. We don't celebrate that. I don't think we have ever celebrated that. We celebrate when he seized the power. And that power has never been returned to the population. So whose economy, therefore, are you discussing? Whose power are you discussing? Whose sovereignty are you discussing?
Does the elite make a mistake to focus on Museveni primarily? Because is that a mistake?
I mean, what do you do? Because he's armed, he's a dominant factor. He occupies you. You are more or less an object. You are more or less a subject.
So and I want to put the same question again. So how does focusing on him help Answer the question that you're raising.
You are celebrating his day. You are celebrating the day he captured power.
No, here we are analyzing.
Actually, the topic is about him.
Yes. In Kakumiro, he was celebrating.
Yes.
On the show, we're discussing and analyzing.
Yes, you are discussing and analyzing his celebration. You are discussing and analyzing the phenomenon of Mr. Museveni.
Yes.
Yes, as an actor. Now, if you look at the 10-point program, and more so in relation to the economy, was it about the elevation of the people as a whole? Or was it about the elevation of the part of the people to elevate the rest of the population? So the Idamids, the Obotis, were looking at the elevation of the people as a whole. Mr. Museveni and the NRA, they look at the destruction of the existing middle class, and I think they have sufficiently destroyed it, and constructing another middle class, which more or less is genetically modified. So you get a Mwangu here, you give him a billions of money to start up an enterprise, but is more or less genetically modified. That's why you see you have these people who have grabbed land, have farms true, but these farms cannot break even. They must be subsidized by the state. They must be subsidized by corruption. Now, when you see the factories that are run by Mr. Kireba Kanwanaho in Ruwero, they are about import substitution to save foreign currency. For what? What is the agenda? That foreign currency is not for investment in infrastructure, is not for investment in terminals that would create both forward and backward linkages, as Mr. Museveni talks about the 10-point program, building an integrated and self-sustaining economy. The import substitution program is to save foreign currency, to construct an army, to build an army, an imperial army. Not an army.
And ensure the country against fragility that Major Rabon was talking about, wouldn't you say?
I don't think that Uganda is stable, really. I doubt. You simply say it is suppressed. You have tendencies that have been suppressed through violence. But there have been attacks. The question is how far we need to go. In case there was collapse, the fundamental question is, would the Uganda project, the Uganda question remain?
Okay.
Would Uganda project remain?
Julius Kapwepe is watching us and is asking the same question and says, for how long shall we be in the Book of Lamentations? What practical steps should be undertaken to expand the economy, to let more Ugandans be effective shareholders and participants in what you call the armed forces? Julius Kapwepe from the East African Budget Network.
You have to do everything possible to disarm Mr. Museveni.
To disarm Mr. Museveni. General Muntu?
Two things have to be done simultaneously. And those of us who are in Alliance for National Transformation, we keep shouting out this over and over. Change happens. Change is a constant. So much as we critique General Museveni because he has had an opportunity to transform this country and he has totally failed. So as we organize to oust him and his regime, we have simultaneously built the capabilities to ensure that another force that gets into does not remain in the vicious cycle in which the country finds itself for the last 60 years. And to break out of that, there must be specific focus in raising the consciousness of the elite, those who are operational within the political sphere, to ensure that there is one place where they are concentrated and they become the dominant force once they go into power. Because since independence, there is no party, there is no government where there haven't been men and women who wanted to build this country, genuinely. But in no formation, whether in government, whether in a political party that has ever been in government, have they ever been a dominant force? Never. Every time those men and women of integrity who put the country above self would be wanting to do the right things wherever they are, being in a minority, always are dispersed or they exist on the periphery of the decision-making processes in whatever formation they are. And I can guarantee you here, Charles, until this country gets a number of people who recognize that, the Kapwepwes and the other name of the person who is talking about lamentation, I hope they are active in building such a force.
Okay.
Until you get such a force, you have change of faces, but the culture will remain the same. You just get people who, the moment they are in positions of power, they look at it as an opportunity for self-aggrandizement. That's the current culture. That's the dominant culture. The question is, how do we shift the balance of forces in favor of those who want to do what is right, to build the state institutions, to put in place functioning systems, to ensure that the principle of separation of powers is observed.
Thank you.
That the principles
you pose a question, General, you say, how do we?
Yes.
I want to pose it back to you, but also read for you a message from Martin Ahewa who says, when did you ever notice that Museveni had deviated from the original mission of good governance? Did Museveni outsmart you, together with your colleagues, Dr. Kiza Besigye, Augustine Ruzindana, Manya Mushega, and others? So, first the how, and then Martin's question.
Well, I mean, in the whole process of building, right from the time when we were fighting in 81, there's a point when, by the way, when it was PRA, when we almost split. In 1982, that's when it was very clear that there were two tendencies. Because there are those who are saying, look, we are not going to build another mercenary force here.
1982?
1982.
That 1 year after you entered the bush?
Yes. Of course, most people don't know it's never something which is even prominent in the public discussion.
That's why someone has asked you to write.
I remember General Museveni was out and he had to run back because we had determined and said we are not going to have a mercenary force like UNRA was. Because there were officers who had been trained in Munduri and the manner of training was commandist in nature. And a number of us who had been in Makerere, actually they are the core of the group that was saying, no, the army has to be restructured. We have to build foundations on the base of which the army can be run. It's not going to be another repressive force. That's when all these structures which were put in the army, for example, police and admin committee, finance committee, accountability committees within the army, to ensure that there are barazas, to ensure that you cannot punish a soldier unless he or she is subjected to the due process of the law, to ensure that there are barazas, that even a man, in the army they call it the
officers and men.
Yeah, officers and men. A man could be critical of the commander without having reprisals after that. That's when we started building the foundation on the base of the survival of UPDF, as it is called now, started from that point. Because by the time General Museveni came from outside, he found that a number of us, and there was a staff sergeant called Mondo, whom we had collaborated with and said, go look for another bush, we are splitting.
1982.
Yes. When he came, he went throughout all the units, which were I think 5 at that time. And we were all almost speaking from the same page. Many of us who had been in Makerere. And we were saying, look, if we are not going to build a force which is qualitatively different from those whom we are fighting, we are wasting people's time.
So, that's important.
So, and the progression and the build-up, by the time we took power, which eventually led, of course, the temptations of power themselves. People don't recognize that. Power can make you drunk if you have not prepared people who are going to operate within the governance structures in a manner that they are stable at the level of consciousness, that they know that they are in there to serve. But they are there most times because you have needs like everybody else has. And if they are not deep in terms of political consciousness, they'll be overwhelmed, like we did. Now, the unfortunate thing, it played in General Museveni's hands. That those who would be overwhelmed would not be guided or be put back on track or put behind bars. Because eventually, everybody who was losing track was also getting trapped. Because if you are involved in something wrong and you're not being touched, then you owe allegiance to the system. You
That
can no longer
protected
stand
you.
on your own and question. That's where we are at in the political sphere, where what's going on, in the public. So those who are questioning, be part of any group that is building capability to break this country out of the vicious circle in which we've been for the last 60 years.
Martin
There-
Mushabe.
there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. Until there is a political formation that has got dominance of those who want to put the country above self, will remain in this vicious circle, even when the faces are different.
Okay. I appreciate feedback from some of our viewers who are saying appreciating management for working on the YouTube, the YouTube transmission of this show. They're saying they're getting a good experience. We had not a very good experience last Thursday, but also those of you who are watching us via the Afro mobile app, we will continue with this discussion on the Afro mobile app for an extra at least 20 minutes after the show on TV ends in a few minutes. But Martin Mushabe is watching us and says, kindly ask General Muntu, him and Kano Besigye among the first disciples of General Museveni. The public assumes they know him better, his weaknesses and his strength. What has made them periodically fail to win power from him and instead resort to blaming Ugandans for General Museveni's longer stay in power?
Let me ask, unfortunately, we don't have, we need to have people who need to do research. The change of the constitution, the Chankwanzi meeting to me is a critical factor. It could have determined a totally different trajectory for this country if we had retained the term limits. People need to do investigation of that. Because you see, human beings are human beings. General Museveni is not an angel. He has got his own weaknesses. He thinks he knows where he wants to take the country. But he can't replace institutions. Now, the problem, therefore, is not that we are blaming. 400 out of 400 people in Chankwanzi, not seeing the danger of removing that safety valve within the Constitution. We don't have time, we would have gone into all those details. Then subsequently, the Parliament. Parliament is supposed to have the cream of society. Men and women who are supposed to not look at the now, but also project into the future and allow themselves to be manipulated. I remember that time the money given was much lower than what's given now. It was only $5 million.
About $1,500.
Emotionally, and I don't know, whatever other, changed that article. I really pray to God that we'll have a smooth transition, because if we don't, if we hit any crisis, those who are involved in that parliament, those who are involved in Chankwanzi, need to know that they would have participated in what eventually could easily happen.
Sarah Bireta is watching
us.
us.
It was a safety valve. And we have seen countries in Africa where it has been sustained.
But now,
it's not that they don't have weaknesses. They have weaknesses in their own leaders. But, when it's a safety valve, a leader comes, 10 years, maybe he's good, maybe they're not good, but they move. Someone else comes in. And you can see those countries are moving on and building, working on their weaknesses, putting strength where there have been weaknesses, and they keep moving. Here is a I have a feeling that I don't want to sound we may sleepwalk ourselves into crisis.
We may.
We may.
Sarah Bireta is watching us, says, every 26th of January, major political talk shows repeat the same debate about assessment of NRM, and the president, who is the chairman of NRM, repeats the same speeches underpinned by Bachwezi comparisons. What can we do differently, according to General Muntu? What new thing is NRM doing beyond power retention? But I'll bring that to Major Rabone, and then I'll come to Honorable Winnie Kiza. The question I want to ask, General Muntu mentioned something important. 1982, in the bush, there is what were the foundations of a major split. President Museveni is able to outwit those who are orchestrating the split, put the rebel army back together, sweep into power in 1986. Arrives in power is able to manage the different political groups that existed at the time, bring the Democratic Party into the fold in what was called the umbrella government. By 1987, you're talking about whether the NRM was supposed to be a transition arrangement or a longer staying arrangement. 1990, 91, 92, that debate is vibrant, and you see it a lot in the Constituent Assembly of 1995. 1996, we're testing the Constitution, trying to lay it down. And then 2000, I think, was professionalization of the army. That was the theme of the NRM manifesto then, to this day. And someone was asking a question here. How has Museveni managed to outwit his critics over the last 37 years? And then the question that Sarah is also asking, the same discussion every 26th of January, General Muntu said, if the NRM gets out of power, possibly we'll have another Liberation Day that we'll be marking. How has he managed to do that? And how do we shift the debate from focusing on Museveni to focusing on the country?
Many people have been talking about that. And I think we have repeated it. We are now hosts. Many Ugandan analysts keep talking about Museveni this, Museveni that, which also points to the fact that maybe he has been very instrumental. First of all, he has studied our history deeply and understands it, and also understands Ugandan society, and knows where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, and how, and he's very patient when you work with him. He listens, can listen for a day, 2, 1 week, 1 year before he makes a decision. Now, what the general was talking about is the evolution of a revolutionary movement. When we were in Cuba in 1987, the Cubans were telling us their story, that they began as a movement and they brought a conglomeration of people, former Batista soldiers, who were like the UNLA soldiers you had, these instructors who didn't have political education. They would want to drill you and make you a robot. Now, there was also, these are different tendencies in a revolutionary movement. There were the General Muntus and others who had come from Makerere with the ideals.
They call them the elite.
Of building a politicized army, an army with a political education, which wants to attain a political objective. And then the other ones want to be soldiers. You are just soldiers, accept orders, you are soldiers. So these conflicting tendencies in most revolutionary movements, if you read the history of the MPLA in Angola, Frelimo, the tendencies have been there.
Where did Museveni stand in that as the commander?
The Museveni I know definitely is more of a politician than a soldier. He believes that the military is a means to an end. The military is a tool to allow you to get where you want to go, to transform society. But it's a pity that we did not develop this discussion further to go into the economy and also see after stability, after what the army has done for the country, and after trying to build enablers, roads, power lines, and whatever, what is the role of the citizen? If Museveni is not there tomorrow, what type of Ugandan do we have? That's what General Muntu was talking about, that the people will put together to manage a post-Museveni dispensation, for example.
The question would be,
have we
done to build that over the last 37 years? Because that's what we're supposed to do. That's what the politics were supposed to do. What has it done to build that?
Chelsea was telling you, even before we began this discussion, that 37 years is a very short time in the history of a country. When you throw in fighting, how many rebellions did we fight? 27 rebellions? In between, there are so many. There was a lot of turbulence.
We have to continue this discussion. We'll discuss the economy because we have to continue this discussion. We're encouraging our viewers, If you're watching us on the normal television, please turn on the Afro mobile app so that you can continue with us for the next few minutes. I will discuss the economy in a little bit more detail and continue with the questions that we are asking on these the rebellions, and many people are uncomfortable.
NBS Frontline.